Royal Park here, northeast of Milan, is absolutely packed. There is Nigel Mansell just 5 minutes before the off. One warm-up lap, and then the race will go. Nigel making his usual signs. He's been waving at the crowd for most of the practice sessions, really enjoying himself here at Monza. But the key question on most people's minds is the tyre situation. Quite a lot of cat and mouse has been played. Lots of the numbers on the tyres, the giveaway numbers, are actually being covered up by tape. I'm not sure if John has got the very latest news, because there are a lot of different combinations here this weekend. John.
Well, Andrew, what's been happening is that after the Belgian Grand Prix, Ferrari discovered that they preferred the older style construction of their Goodyear race tyre. McLaren prefer the new style, so Ferrari put pressure on Goodyear, their tyre company, to provide this tyre. So Goodyear, being a supplier of the majority of teams, had to produce tyres for everybody, all of their runners. So we've now got not only different compounds, but we've got different constructions in those different compounds. But because of the importance of this race, principally because of Prost and Senna, neither team is prepared to concede or announce what combination of setup they're going to run. I believe McLaren will run with the new construction tyre in the front. Ferrari will run with the old construction in the front, but which compound they're going to use is really still a mystery.
And still a mystery about whether people will actually make pit stops. We've been talking to different Goodyear people, and they've given us different stories. What's your verdict?
Well, I believe when there's indecision like that, there's always going to be pit stops, and in fact, quite often this year we've been given information which indicates that pit stops aren't going to be necessary. And what happens? Well, within about 15 laps, somebody's into the pits, and of course, once one person starts that process, then others tend to follow, and it's one of those situations that the first man in, and then there'll be 3 or 4 in following him. So I expect pit stops, and I expect to see some teams possibly making even more than one pit stop.
Well, you just saw then the packed grandstand, in fact the helicopter flying over our commentary box, and I have to tell you that John Watson and I are behind bars this weekend. For the first time in my commentary career, they've actually put bars up in front of the commentary box. I presume it's because we can't jump out. We don't want to jump out, do we, John?
Oh, we're talking about metal bars, not the bar that you go in for some refreshment, of course.
Well, 1 minute to go before this warm-up lap, and it really is going to be, we predict, a superb Italian Grand Prix. This grudge match between the two highest placed men in the World Championship. Senna, remember, on 63 points. Alain Prost now fallen behind on 50 points. A Ferrari victory here would absolutely raise the roof. Prost looking very, very good in the final qualifying. And then, in that last 5 minutes, Senna putting in that super quick lap. Lots of problems with the car yesterday, but they got it sorted out. He seems to have the car very well sorted this morning also, John. So on full tanks, it was looking good. So McLaren, Ferrari, and then of course the Benetton, and Nannini would love to do well here. And I think John knows that Ferrari have even this very day been speaking to Nannini about moving from Benetton. It looks like a 1992 move as they go off on that warm-up lap.
Yes, Prost just coming up alongside Senna. Of course, this is just the final lap before we come up onto the grid. But
just name the corners, John. So
okay, well, we're coming down here. This is the first chicane. This is the cause of a great deal of trouble throughout practice, and it most certainly will be, I'm sure, as the 26 cars stream into this on the first lap. You really have to, if you're in the middle or the back of the grid, lift off about 5 seconds before you think you need to, because the front of the grid slows down rapidly. And if you're still on the throttle, you're going to run into the man ahead of you. But here we now come around what used to be the glorious Curva Grande. This used to be a straight run into the Curva Grande, no chicane. And it was late, or as early as 1971, when the race was last run on the old circuit. It was truly amazing sight to see cars go through that. They're now coming down. They've come out of the second chicane. This is into Lesmo 1. I consider this is the best corner on the circuit. It's certainly the most difficult. And here now we have Lesmo 2, which is just about flat out. Cars exiting, just kissing that curb on the exit, not riding over the curb. Senna did that a week ago in testing and actually wrote the bottom of his car off. And they exit there around maybe 170 miles an hour. Now Senna back in control. The cars have slowed right down. And this is another fairly fast part of the circuit. Again, 185, 190 miles an hour. They come up to, this used to be the old Ascari curve. It's now called the Vialone. In fact, it's the 3-part corner chicane. It's the best of the chicanes here in the Monza circuit. It's quite quick in. It's third gear in. You change to fourth gear in the middle through the right-hand part. and then accelerating out, kissing that curve, and we saw Jean Alesi and Nakajima getting very out of shape on the exit there. In 5th gear by the time they just come off the curve, then down up into 6th gear, and then the run down to this, well, I think is again a fabulous corner, the Parabolica, quite tight at the entry, but about 120 miles an hour. As you see, the cars, they're really slowed right down. Everybody trying to get their tyre temperatures up. They're weaving around that long crocodile of cars, slowly making their way down. Senna wants to get the pack of cars really as compacted as possible, because the less time he has to wait in the grid, of course, the less time he has to worry about engines overheating and just the general tension of the start of the race.
Yes, it's 53 laps, 191 miles or 307 kilometres, and it will not last more than about an hour and 20 minutes. And John has just been handed a list with all the Goodyear tyre choices. John?
Well, Ayrton Senna, let's say, he's on the B compound with the new front construction and the old rear construction. Alan Prost has chosen to go with the A compound. That's the most durable, the hardest. Now, I suspect he's going to try and go through the race without a pit stop. He's got old front and rear constructions. Gerhard Berger has also gone with the A compound. That's the durable one, with the new front construction and the old rear construction. Now, if you're not any confused, I can go right through it. But Nigel Mansell, who's also on the second row of the grid, he's chosen to go for A's as well.
I think the big thing,
old front and rear constructions.
The big thing is, John, that Senna has gone for a different tyre compared with Prost, Berger and Mansell. So Senna looks as if he's going to try and go all the way through.
Yes, I think what Senna will obviously try to do is take the lead, and then just really control the race from the front and try and be very gentle on his B compound tyres.
And they're nearly on the same as Senna, so that's an interesting choice as the cars line up on this huge start-finish line. Just see the old banking in the background. They used to combine the two circuits for sports car races, and engines revving. Just see the traffic lights come on, and then it'll be off on these 53 laps, the first of these 53 laps. We won't be at all surprised to see someone in a sand trap before the end of that first lap on one of the 3 chicanes. The man at the back waves the green flag. Everybody ready to go. Engines race. A very good start from Senna. A good start from Berger too.
Yes, and Berger has taken second place from Alan Prost. Absolutely perfect for McLaren. 1-2 into the first chicane, but Prost, looking to come down the inside of Berger, decides not to. And then Jean Alesi has elevated himself into 4th spot. The man's amazing. And here we see, well, is it De Cesaris or Pirro? I think it's Pirro, had a little pirouette just coming into the first chicane, but Senna leading, Berger second, Prost third, Alesi 4th as they stream round Curva Grande, and Alesi climbing all over the back of Prost Ferrari, pulling out to the right, and to the left. Oh my goodness, and he's going down the inside, taking 3rd place from Alan Prost. This man is amazing, but his Pirelli tyres are not expected to last the race distance, and he is just really giving it absolute maximum.
Yes, I think Alesi subscribes to the same view as Keke Rosberg, that you can really make up a lot of time in that first lap by really turning it on as the flag goes on. Perhaps some people taking half a lap or so to really get into the rhythm, but Alesi can really turn it on. Sensational. Jean Alesi in 3rd place in front of both the Ferraris. Ferrari will want him to drive them even more when they see that. Blue flags waving, lots of jostling of positions there, but a very clean start to the race, not like the Belgian Grand Prix.
No, the only incident we had was Emanuele Pirro having a little spin coming into the chicane. I don't know whether he was actually nudged or not, but it was clean. He didn't involve anybody else after the spin, so we've got off to a clean start. Thank goodness we've got off to a clean start to this 1990 Italian Grand Prix. And here they are streaming out of this long and very... and one of the Lotus has run wide and have a huge shunt. That's Derek Warwick. His car's upside down. The 2 left-hand wheels are off. His car, there's a small... That's just really a vapour fire. There's no problem, but I think we might well see a red flag coming out. Derek Warwick is okay. He's out of the car, totally unhurt, but Derek ran wide on the exit of the corner. An enormous shunt for Derek. Water and oil pouring out of the radiators. As you see, Derek Warwick absolutely unhurt, but a major shunt on the Parabolica just before the end of the first lap.
And that shows how strong these cars are. 12 years ago, there is no question Derek Warwick would be in an ambulance after an accident like that. Look at it there. We'll probably see it in slow-mo. The marshals there just trying to crane out of the commentary box there. We don't have a very good view out of our commentary box.
And Andrew, we've got the red flag. The marshals, or the marshals, the clerk of the course have decided to stop the race. Derek Warwick's car is in a dangerous position. They will have to remove that car. The cars will proceed back to the start-finish line. And here we see Warwick. He got very wide, really relatively early in the exit of the corner, onto the grass, into the sand trap, and an almighty wallop. He hit the barrier.
See that Marshall
Yes,
going?
indeed. Well, that was a Marshall's post. In fact, I think he clobbered, or the barrier certainly just behind the Marshall's post.
See Derek's head there as well,
Yes,
the blue and white helmet.
But the benefit of the construction of these cars is with the carbon fibre honeycomb construction of the chassis, there's a lot of bodywork around the chassis as well, and of course the rollover hoop, which must be higher than the driver's head, plus there's an additional roll hoop. Derek Warwick running back to the pits. He wants to go motor racing. He's going to jump into the spare car and take the restart.
That is unbelievable. A man from Jersey, originally from Hampshire, the son of a trailer manufacturer, and that is one of the biggest shunts of his career. And look at Derek, the adrenaline is still pumping for certain. And he's into the pits, and he wants to get into that spare car.
Well, he's going to go motor racing. The race will be restarted. Everybody will be allowed to start. Once they clear the wreck of Derek's original car away, he will be into that car and in what, maybe 10 or 15 minutes rejoin the proceedings.
Talking there to Rupert Manwaring, the team manager of Lotus. Frank Durney there, the designer of the car, also in the conversation. There's Frank. Derek's mechanic.
Derek is going to have to change his helmet, Andrew, because when the car went upside down, his helmet may well have just kissed that Armco barrier, because there's a gash in the helmet, so he's going to have to get a spare helmet. But look at the bodywork, and the Marshal we see just in the corner of the screen, either diving or he may well have been hit by something, but not quite clear really. We'll have to wait a little bit longer and see, but that was a very, very severe impact. He actually hit the end of the tire wall, but Derek Warwick is absolutely unhurt. He's back in the pits. He actually ran all the way back. He must have run the best part of a quarter of a mile to get back to the pits. Here the car now turning upside down, but fortunately the car in fact never got onto its rollover hoop. It was the bodywork on the side of the car that kept the car at that angle.
Suzuki and
Martini in the Minardi having to slow right down. Suzuki pulling over to the left, Minardi going to the right. And of course all this is very dramatic indeed. But of course to the drivers in those cars, they are, because of the adrenaline, the flow of adrenaline, they are able to pick up anything so quickly. Your eyesight, your hearing, everything is so alert because of that adrenaline charge.
Yes, well, they haven't moved that car yet, and one man who's going to be very disappointed is Jean Alesi after that sensational start. Look at the eyes of Derek Warwick, a man who has just escaped death at 120, 130 miles an hour.
More than that, I would think at that point when he went off, he was probably close to 150 miles an hour. And that was a very big impact. He hit the end of the tire wall. That was responsible for the car getting flipped over onto its side. It didn't go totally upside down, fortunately not. But again, it's testament to the strength of the current Formula One car. And we've been talking about safety for drivers in these cars. Whether that car would have been 540 kilos or 500 kilos, in that instance, it wouldn't have made any difference. The only concern that I have is with the driver cockpits, the amount of room the driver has in. Look again, Warwick getting wide. Once he got onto the grass, he was trapped. The car then just got pulled in, went into the end of the sand trap and hit the end of the tire wall at a very, very sharp angle, I must say. But of course, that poor Marshal, who was right behind the post, may well have been clipped by some of the flying debris.
Yes, well, a violent accident there to Derek Warwick, reminding us of the dangers of Grand Prix racing. So I was saying, John, a sensational start to the race. The two McLarens slotting into first and second place, and then Alesi. The restart is going to be in 15 minutes' time. See the flames licking up there, and just one wheel left on the car. Yes,
those flames really are not of any significance. That's just the way the engines are installed in these cars. All the fuel lines are what we call dry brake. They're aircraft standard fuel lines. Now here's Derek Warwick back in the spare car, making his way round to the grid to restart the Grand Prix. Now, I don't know what will be going through Derek's mind, but of course it's a bit like falling off a horse. You want to get straight back onto it as quickly as possible, and that was a fairly major fall Derek took. But with the concentration and this adrenaline flow, everything will feel natural. He really any shock he might feel or may go through will not come now. It will probably come possibly when he gets home later on this evening, or maybe later in the week.
Possibly when he sees it on television, I should think.
Well, absolutely. Look, remember I had that shunt here in 1981, an enormous shunt, not dissimilar to what we saw Derek have. I didn't know what had gone on. My car didn't turn over, of course, But when I got out of the car and I looked around and saw how much damage there was, I couldn't believe it. I thought I just had a little nudge with the barrier, but the engine and gearbox were broken off the car. You know, you don't feel, it's like a boxer. He looks awful. He doesn't really feel very much pain. It's only afterwards when you relax and that adrenaline has actually slowed down, do you realise that, well, you were quite lucky.
Well, there we are. Derek Warwick back in the spare Camel Lotus Lamborghini. And in fact, it was amazing how far that car travelled after that accident. It's almost back to the end of the grid. There you see Derek coming up to the grid now. There's the pit road. It went all the way around as you see the car coming back on the back of that truck.
Yes, well, of course, once the car was upside down, unlike a car spinning, there was no coefficient, there was no friction to slow the car down. It was just really the bodywork, and of course that carbon fibre material in effect would, I don't want to say lubricate because I'll get into trouble for saying that again, but the car had no real means of slowing down. You saw the 500 kilos that car is, just sliding the car down the racetrack. Gradually the energy was dissipated, but it did go a long way, and that is a concern. Of course, the heavier the weight a car is, the further it would go. Derek now stepping out of the car. He's going to have a few minutes, 10 minutes or so of a wait before he'll climb back in, and then the cars will proceed for the second time. And we were just saying how wonderful it was to get clear. In fact, they don't have tyres there. They've got like polystyrene blocks on the outside of that barrier, and that is what probably Warwick clipped, and it was that probably turned the car over. The marshal's post, you can see just directly behind, there's an extinguisher there, the blue flag. He may well have been clipped by some of that debris that was chucked out. Those actually may contain water. Looking at them, there's a black knob. Now Derek, of course, laughing it all off. The guy to his right is his personal trainer, Heinz, from the Willy Dunkel School of Training in Austria. And let's see if we can hear what Derek's saying.
As I come up behind him, taking on straight, I just lost it to the grass.
No, he said, we could just hear in the background him saying just as he...
Poi di controllare il mezzo ed è uscito e poi è successo il resto. Però tutto tranquillo, no grazie, non voglio grazie. È tutto tranquillo, sta scherzando con i meccanici. Effettivamente, dico, ma non è che sia sotto shock, perché lui veramente è un tipo che scherza, come si diceva prima, non è che è sopra le righe, veramente non l'ha nemmeno toccato questo tipo di incidente.
Sì, anche perché poi è stato talmente velocissimo,
sì,
lui
accorto, forse.
È uscito e quindi...
Ecco, adesso c'è la televisione giapponese con l'intervista.
Certo che però l'impatto è stato forte.
Sì.
Beh, fortunatamente hai visto che c'erano anche quei grossi blocchi di espanso che a loro volta hanno consentito di ammortizzare l'urto. Poi, come dico, l'uscita nella parte finale della curva parabolica ha fatto sì che l'angolo con quale la vettura è arrivata contro il guardrail era un angolo molto molto modesto.
Assolutamente, la regia ce li mostra.
È stato più un trampolino per portare la vettura verso la pista, ed è stato un vantaggio notevole che i concorrenti che seguivano siano riusciti ad aprirsi senza andarlo a investire, perché il vero rischio era quello lì.
Sì, che ci poteva subentrare una
certo.
collisione.
Della sicurezza, quindi tutto tranquillo, non c'è stato nessun tipo di problema, quindi...
Non, non problème, mais je pense une preuve pour tout le public mondial de la qualité de la sécurité quand on voit cet accident terrible, la voiture complètement ouverte mais le cockpit intact, le pilote qui reprend la course. Nous avons vraiment des sécurités extraordinaires sur les voitures.
Ecco, ha fatto proprio i complimenti a questa organizzazione di Monza, che lo merita effettivamente. Ci ricordiamo che anche Imola ha avuto delle strutture tali da poter consentire la sicurezza assoluta per questo tipo di gare, però effettivamente ci sono delle situazioni nel caso specifico di questo sport, è vero che non sempre evidentemente con tutte diciamo le protezioni del caso, è uno sport che porta con sé ovviamente il discorso della pericolosità, direi anche, senza scomodare tanti psicologi, che anche fa parte del gioco questo tipo di situazione, no?
Fa parte del gioco, ma questo incidente è un po' dovuto anche all'eccessiva velocità. Il presidente Barella questa mattina, presentando un po' quello che dovrebbero essere le nuove regole per l'anno prossimo, ha messo il punto anche sul fattore velocità, che sta cercando
un colloquio con i tecnici per cercare di diminuire la velocità soprattutto in curva. Quindi...
Tra l'altro una cosa, ci sarebbe da dire che sulla sopraelevata c'è un po' troppa gente, non so se riuscirete poi a vederla e la inquadrerà, secondo me il pubblico esagera un pochino, quindi andiamoci piano sul fatto che ci sia sicurezza eccetera. Il discorso è vero, sono stati bravissimi, però bisognerebbe stare anche un po' attenti, soprattutto col discorso pubblico. Tu dicevi dei cartelli, ma anche questa, non dico che sia un'invasione, però sono troppo vicini alla pista. Adesso Derek Warwick, sembra ti abbiano ascoltato le regazioni, probabilmente vediamo da attraverso il finestrino c'è il medico ufficiale che sta controllando pulsazioni, sta controllando la situazione del pilota e quindi probabilmente, come tu avevi giustamente detto, succede in America, quindi succede anche qui, sta controllando le condizioni psicofisiche del pilota, per quello che può controllare ovviamente, però in questi casi qui è ben difficile merito.
Sì, penso che è una regola che bisogna introdurre, perché si parla sempre troppo e molto di sicurezza, quindi...
Ecco, però vedi qui adesso questo esce sorridendo, sembrava quasi uno sketch, detto tra me, gli ha sentito il polso come quando il bambino c'è una linea di febbre, non credo che abbia potuto verificare chissà che cosa. Però, come si diceva prima, Derek Warwick è particolare, è un tipo che tra l'altro non corre da ieri, quindi è uno che ha una scorza bella, dura, quindi non è che...
Senti Ezio,
ha una costituzione da rugby man.
Ezio, risolto il problema di
è inutile che chiediamo al motore, chiediamo al dottore perché...
No.
Excuse me. Derek Warwick? Yes, he seems to be very well. Dice che è apparso ottimamente in ottime condizioni. Quindi abbiamo anche il crisma ufficiale del dottore che lo lascia qui,
il quale gira scortato, l'abbiamo visto, da Giorgio Francia con la sua 164 quadrifoglio.
Secondo me c'è più pericolo per il dottore, secondo me c'è più pericolo per il dottore che per Derek Warwick.
Senti, ma ritorniamo un attimo alla corsa, visto che è passato il pericolo e quindi purificati gli istinti meno lodevoli. Torniamo alla corsa, non è il caso di andare a chiedere a Fiorio se era contento di come era partito Prost.
Adesso però te l'assicuro, noi siamo su tutte le notizie, come si suol dire, sulla notizia, però effettivamente io a volte con Fiorio soprattutto mi sembra un po' di esagerare, voglio dire, è una situazione abbastanza delicata in questo momento. Ovviamente fatto tesoro di questa situazione, credo che prenderanno le misure necessarie. Vediamo un po' se con un attimo di gentilezza riusciamo a capire, però d'altro canto sai, in questo momento è una situazione abbastanza delicata. Adesso vediamo. C'era da dire che questa mattina, per esempio, Berger è partito molto bene. Meno male che ha detto che aveva dei problemi al retrotreno, non si capiva se era una questione gomme o una questione di assetto. Mentre Senna si diceva soddisfattissimo della sua macchina. Ecco Berger è qui, si sta mettendo in macchina, è un soggetto che di solito anche lui non tradisce emozioni. Gerard, sale signor. Tutto a posto, però giustamente si vuole concentrare. È un ragazzo molto simpatico anche Gerard Berger, quando non esageri troppo nel domandargli cose, esula dalla corsa, nel tempo che ti risponde ti dà le risposte proprio attinenti al tema, non è che tergiversa o risponde tanto per rispondere. Qui abbiamo Prost in macchina, Cesare Fiorio sta consultando il cronometro, procedura di partenza che si rifà. Cesare Fiorio, cosa puoi dire della primissima partenza? Nel tempo che ti risponde ti dà le risposte proprio attinenti al tema, non è che tergiversa o risponde tanto per rispondere. Qui abbiamo Prost in macchina, Cesare Fiorio sta consultando il cronometro, procedura di partenza che si rifà. Cesare Fiorio, cosa puoi dire della primissima partenza che c'è stata, così?
Ma l'unica considerazione è che per fortuna Derek Warwick non si è fatto nulla e addirittura ha potuto allinearsi, questo credo è l'unica nota positiva di questo incidente.
Grazie. È entrato ovviamente nel merito della partenza, mi pare anche giusto. Senti, io volevo solo una cosa, volevo vedere se Alesi poteva un attimino, non lo voleva neanche lui disturbare perché...
Sì, Alesi era scatenato il primo giro.
Complimenti Jean, visto è andata bene, non è successo niente per Derek Warwick, complimenti per quella partenza perché hai infiammato il pubblico italiano.
Questo fa piacere di vedere che dopo un incidente grosso così il pilota non si è fatto niente, perché per noi è sempre un po' difficile di vedere che quando una macchina è pericolosa, e tutto adesso siamo abbastanza a posto con la regolazione per le macchine di Formula 1.
Certo. Ti lasciamo stare nella tua concentrazione perché avrai bisogno per una seconda partenza. Carinissimo questo giovane talento, dobbiamo pure il giovane talento perché in effetti ha dimostrato più e più volte non per niente sarebbe primo in lista per quanto riguarda la rosa dei papabili alla guida della macchina di Mansell, insomma non lascerà appunto la Ferrari.
Ha preso un muletto naturalmente che riteniamo fosse regolato per lui, ed ecco che ricomincia il giro. Clay, ancora a te.
Yes, well, the second warm-up lap, heading towards the second start, following Derek Warwick's mammoth accident through that chicane. A big grandstand there. They say that's perhaps 200,000 people here at Monza. They haven't issued an official figure. You can see how wooded it is. It's an old 17th century manor house in the park, and it is a quite amazing complex.
And for all the ecologists out there that wonder what is motor racing doing to these trees are all protected, and anything to do with removing those is subject to enormous pressures from those people.
Yes, in fact, this circuit, which was first started in 1922, they started building it in 1922. In fact, they had to stop building it because there were problems with conservationists, and nothing changes, does it? But when they did get really into building the race circuit, apparently it was completed in a record 110 days. And the track was actually opened on the 28th of August 1922. Then it was 6.25 miles round. It was a combined road and bank circuit, but the whole place fell into disrepair during the Second World War and was then rebuilt again with a new and steeper banking in 1955, and that of course was used for the race of two worlds when the Indy cars came over. And just that news from Balestra, I wonder if he remembered that. And then of course the racetrack has had several updates since then, although the banking has fallen into disuse.
Well, here we're looking at Gerhard Berger just giving those tyres a little bit more treatment, a little bit more warmth. The idea of doing that, weaving side to side, is to make the sidewall of the tyre flex a little bit and induce some heat through the energy that the tyre is being subjected to. Here we are looking up at Berger's head. Now we've gone back to the long shot, back to Berger, and this is a camera shot that I hope will actually show a little bit more of the discomfort that a driver really goes through, is subjected to in the course of a Grand Prix.
Yes, unfortunately his arm tends to get in the way in that shot. Similar camera position used in the Monaco Grand Prix in Senna's car. And you can see there from this helicopter shot how that parabolica corner does join two parallel straights together. I know there are drivers who call it the diabolica, John.
Well, I think it's a great corner. It's certainly a very long one, and as Derek Warwick did find out not less than 20 minutes ago, it's a pretty exciting one, and particularly if you go off where he did. Really very much, he was going probably 150 miles an hour when he went off, Andrew, and that's rather quick.
Well, let's hope we have a clean start this time. See lots of tifosi, the Italian fans, the passionate fans that come from around Monza, all up on the banking at the back there, and that huge scoreboard which has been a feature of this track for so many years. We go in car with Gerhard as cars still take up their positions. Slightly
slower coming onto the grid formally. It's always a worrying time when you're in the front row of the grid. You're sitting there, every second seems like a minute. Hopefully in about 5 seconds time the marshal at the back will raise the flag to say everybody's in position. There it goes, the red light's going to come on. Revs up, 12,000 revs, great night. And Senna again, but Prost got a better start this time, but Berger trying to find a way through on the grass. He's bullied his way through. Prost had to concede. So again, Senna, Berger, Prost, but a lazy coming down on the right hand side. Again, getting past Mansell. In the same situation, and another, well, everybody, it's almost a traffic jam into the first chicane, but I think everybody's got through. But let's watch Jean Alesi, again on the outside of Prost, coming through the Curva Grande, looking for a gap. Prost may be a little bit more wise to what Alesi's up to. He may well prevent him, but Alesi coming down the inside. Look at the sparks coming off the front wing end plates. But Alesi has done it again in exactly the same spot. The guy is, well, he's incorrigible.
Yes, that's unbelievable. Just repeated the same exercise. So this is the second start for the Italian Grand Prix here at Monza. The race halted after the first lap when Derek Warwick had that enormous accident. And it is Senna from Berger and Alesi and the two Ferraris side by side.
Yes, Nigel Mansell having a sniff down the inside of Alain Prost, deciding against it. Remember, Jean Alesi's on Pirelli tyres. Alain Prost is on Goodyear's hardest race tyres. So Prost will not really be unduly worried about what Alesi's doing. He knows that he's not going to be in third spot for really all that long, and he's on that hard tire. He's planning to go the entire distance without a stop.
The two Williams running together, and then the two Benettons. Prost in front of Mansell. Alesi third. Gugelmin well up. Derek Warwick a couple of places this time behind his teammates and making it round the Parabolica this time. Those sparks coming up from the titanium skid plates.
And look at John Alesi, he really is, he's catching up to the rear of Gerhard Berger's McLaren, and I really wonder just is he going to try and take second spot from Gerhard Berger. But here we are seeing the back of the field filing through that first chicane. Now down to the second chicane, Senna, Berger, Alesi getting closer to Berger, Prost, Mansell and Patrese, sixth in the Williams.
And after that it's Boutsen, Nannini, Piquet, Gugelmin, Donnelly, Warwick, Bernard Warwick, Martini, Nakajima, Capelli, Suzuki, Pirot, Caffey, Alboreto. That's the first 19. Senna leads. Berger is second. Alesi is third, and the two McLarens are very close indeed. And Berger looking for a challenge.
Yes, Berger sort of came, I think, got out of the second Lesmo slightly quicker than Senna did, and he was able to carry that speed all the way down that straight, and he did come onto the gearbox, thought about it, then thought better of it, and fell back in behind Senna.
But look at Alesi, is right with the two McLarens as a Williams goes wide.
Yes, that was Boutsen running wide, and he got it back again. But these first three cars, a pocket handkerchief would cover them.
And then the Benettons and Williams all mixed up together. Then it's Gugelmin, then Donnelly. After Donnelly, it's Bernard, and then Warwick.
Derek Warwick really just using that first lap to really settle down. He lost a place on the first lap, but really understandably so, and having now got into the race, got through the first lap, gone past the corner where he had that accident, he can get on with the job of going motor racing, and I expect to see Warwick getting past Eric Bernard in the Lola Lamborghini and catching up to the back of his teammate Martin Donnelly.
Senna, Berger, Alesi, they're the first three, and those three pulling away quite substantially from the two Ferraris, Prost and Mansell.
Yes, and Prost has actually again opened up a gap on Nigel Mansell. We saw Mansell having a little look down the inside of Prost, three-quarter way around the circuit on the previous lap, but the gap has opened up to over a second. So Mansell and Prost remaining fourth and fifth on this, the third lap.
The lap time's currently around the 1 minute 30 mark. They'll come down substantially from there. In fact, fastest lap so far to Jean Alesi. And we've got this big battle for fourth place. There's Derek Warwick, followed by Nakajima and Capelli. And look at Alesi.
Well, listen, I mean, it's quite remarkable. Alesi's got so little horsepower in relation to the two Honda-powered McLarens ahead of him. But of course, really, the reason he's able to go so quickly, apart from his own abilities, are that the Pirelli tyre he's on is really not a race distance tyre. It's a tyre that will have to be changed at some point, and really Alesi's just putting on a wonderful show. I mean, the guy's spirit and his brio in the race car is quite remarkable, and with something like 620 horsepower, even more so.
Yes, John, lest we forget, he very much reminds me of Jochen Rindt, who died here 20 years ago. Very similar kind of driver. And a little tribute at the Parabolica on the railings there to Jochen Rindt. I was very touched to see that yesterday.
Well, further back down the field, we've got Nannini all over the back of the two Williams. They're trying to find a way past. Nannini with the V8 Ford engine, and of course the Williams with the V10 Renault engines. Nannini was third quickest in the warm-up this morning, and really he will want to get past the Williams as quickly as possible to enable him to move forward towards the two Ferraris.
Yes, of course, Nannini was very quick in the morning warm-up, third fastest, but look at this trio together, and I do suspect that the Ferraris are closing up on them.
Nannini now is through. Patrese, Boutsen, Nelson Piquet welded to the gearbox of Thierry Boutsen.
Yes, this is lap number 4 into the Parabolica. Senna leading Berger. Berger, remember, has not won a race for McLaren yet.
I talked to Ron Dennis this morning, Andrew, and he was saying, in fact, he felt that Berger ought to have had pole position. He was terribly badly held up in qualifying by Modena in the first chicane. And maybe Senna is not entirely satisfied with the setup of his car. That also might be part of the reason why he's and a lazy spun. Yep. Lazy finally, and he's bumped into the barrier. The right rear has kissed the barrier. Doesn't look to have damaged the suspension, but I suspect he's also stalled the engine. But John Alesi's climbing out of the Tyrrell. That's the end of his day's work here at Monza.
I think that Ken Tyrrell, when he gets back to the pits, will be waving his finger at Jean Alesi. The impetuosity of youth. Let's watch it again. Too late on the brakes.
Yes, he just got the back of the car. I suspect the rear, the brake balance in the car was biased towards the rear. It allowed the back to swing round, of course. Slid over the curb and just nudged that barrier. There doesn't really look to be any damage to the car. It may just have tweaked that right rear wheel slightly. But look at the crowd. They're just loving Alesi. I mean, this is the kind of driver Italian race fans come to Monza to cheer on. They love racing drivers, not people who drive race cars, but men who actually race these things.
Yeah, hard chargers, lions as they call Nigel Mansell. Lots of different banners around this circuit. Some of them actually rather rude, we have to say. But anyway, Senna it is, who is under pressure from his teammate Gerhard Berger. Alan Prost has pulled away a little bit from Nigel Mansell. Then it's Sandro Nannini. Then it is Patrese. Then it is Thierry Boutsen. Then Nelson Piquet. Then it is Mauricio Gugelmin, Martin Donnelly, Eric Bernard, Derek Warwick, Satoru Nakajima and Ivan Capelli.
And Derek Warwick is actually now beginning to make some inroads. He just got past Nakajima. So we'll just have to keep an eye on Warwick and see how his progress is through the race after that somewhat spectacular and rather frightening start to the first part of the Grand Prix.
The lap times in the low 1:29s at the moment from the quick men. Senna, Berger, very evenly matched. Prost, Mansell. In fact, 2 seconds between Berger and Prost, and then another 2 seconds between Prost and Mansell.
But these two really pressing on. I think Senna would really not want to have this pressure from Gerhard Berger. Remember, he is on this slightly softer compound tire, so he will not really want to have to race his teammate. Berger's on the more durable and competitive, harder A compound, so he is able to lean on his tire that much more and assert and inflict pressure upon Senna.
Yes, the two Williams going through the picture. There's Gugelmin, Martin Donnelly. Interesting to see Johnny Herbert here this weekend, and we rather suspect he may be the Lotus driver. But we do hear a rumour that Lotus may lose their Lamborghini engines for 1991.
Well, there's been a lot of rumours about who's going to get which engine. But in fact, I believe Lotus found out this weekend that the Lamborghini engine will not be with them next year. I understand it's going to be with the Ligier team. Quite a surprise, because most people had expected the Renault engine to go to Ligier, but that's not the case. So they're going to have Lamborghini V12 power in 1991. The other team in Formula One that will have the engine is the yet to be seen racing. The former Glass, the Fughieri, this car built in Italy by Mauro Fughieri, who is responsible for the engine. And the third team to get the Lamborghini V12 engine will in fact be the Spice Group C team in sports car racing. So both Lola, the former Lola Lamborghini team, and Lotus appear to be left in the cold. And really, I don't know what engine options they're going to have for next year. It's not looking very healthy for them.
Yes, I was speaking to John Judd in the paddock, and he tells me that the new Judd V10 is definitely only available to Scuderia Italia, to Dallara, and it won't even be available to any sports car team should they want it. So the other Judd engines, the two different versions of the V8, presumably will be available, and presumably Lotus, who have had those engines in the past, may look at a Judd.
Yes, but of course they're going to an engine which, as good an engine as it is, and looking at Jean Alesi here walking back, somewhat disappointed, but I mean, those first 3 laps were truly electrifying, and he may be disappointed, but the guy has got an enormous heart. But going back to this engine situation, not only have Lotus lost the Lamborghini engine, Honda are supplying engines to a second team, Ferrari are supplying engines to a second team. So a team like Lotus and a team like the LaRouche Lola team really are up against it.
They certainly are. And we were discussing possible options earlier on in the paddock, John and I, and we really can't see too many apart from the old type Cosworth or a Judd, unless someone is keeping a very good secret. Senna still leads. Berger is second. Then it's Prost, flames spurting out of his exhaust system. Then it's Nigel Mansell, a couple of seconds back from Prost. Then it's Nannini, followed by Patrese.
And that gap between Senna and Berger beginning to open up very slightly. Of course, Berger, when he was running so close as he was to Senna, it's not the most comfortable way to drive because you are in that disturbed air. So your concentration also is doubly intense because you're not only just looking at the car ahead of you, you've got to be aware of what is ahead of that car as well. So maybe he's decided just to drop back. Oh, and there with Martini, having had a little spin where he's either stopped or spun, we can't quite tell. That was just the second chicane, but he's proceeding on his way. Whether that's a trip into the pits or whether he's going to continue motor racing, we'll have to wait and see when he comes round.
The two Williams cars very closely matched, and John has been watching the Williams motorhome last night, where he saw Nigel Mansell having a long conversation with Frank Williams. And you remember that Mansell has held a press conference earlier in the day as Gerhard Berger gets a little out of shape to say that he is definitely retiring from Grand Prix racing. What do you make of it all, John?
Well, let's have a look and see. Oh, we're going to go back again now and see some incident. Look, that's thing. But that was Martini locking up a wheel on the inside. Yes, he may well have actually got a brake disc or something seized up. That left front wheel was a problem. Yes, Mansell, he went into Frank Williams' motorhome. Most of the activity here at Monza has taken place in the twilight hours. We've had John O'Lacey in the Ferrari motorhome. We've had Nigel Mansell talking to Frank Williams. And I have it on very good authority, they weren't talking about golf or aeroplanes.
Well, we wonder. Nigel keeping everyone guessing.
But of course, the other thing is Nigel did call this impromptu press conference to state that he has no intentions of being a Grand Prix driver. He's not ruling out being a racing driver in other categories. So all the scribes, all the British, how would we call them, the press. Oh, then this problem for Martini. That's the right rear of the car. Something is broken on the right rear. We saw the left front lock up. The consequence was the left front locking up was that the right rear has broken, so the car would tilt down towards the right rear, allowing the left front to come up in the air, and that was what was causing the smoke to come off that left front tyre.
This is lap number 9 going on to lap number 10.
And let's just watch in the chicane, because they're beginning to use much more of the curbs than they were in the early laps. That's an indication to the amount of grip they have from their tyres. They're not so quick through there as they were in the early laps.
But what I was going to say, John, is look at Alan Prost now. He was right up with the two McLarens.
Yes, Prost getting into a very good position. Although Ayrton Senna's the man he wants to be behind. Being this close to Gerhard Berger, really, it's not much more than I would say, an 8-iron between Prost and where Ayrton Senna is on the road. Alan Prost, of course, being another fanatical golfer.
Does indeed own a golf club, or golf course, shall we say. Prost down into the 28s now. That's the fastest lap so far, 28.657.
Interesting that Berger just closed up again through the second Lesmo. He pulled out a lead on Prost. Prost and Senna are not as quick through that second Lesmo. Berger really seems to have got that corner sussed, because he again caught right up to the gearbox of Ayrton Senna coming into this third chicane. So Berger, whatever way he has got his car set up, he is able to carry his speed through that second Lesmo. Again, a very important corner, because there's a long fast section following that corner into that third chicane.
Do you feel that Senna's actually holding up Berger and that's allowed Prost to catch up? Is that the situation?
Well, I would imagine with Berger's tyre choice, he's driving really as slowly as he can afford to do. He doesn't want to press on. He is really going to try and conserve his tyres. And I'm sure that by starting on the B compound, that is really the biggest consideration he has. He will want to go through certainly first, third race distance with the minimum amount of effort being put into those tyres. Once he gets beyond that, then possibly he can go full distance on his set of tyres, and hopefully he will be in a position then to capitalise on running on that slightly softer compound.
10 laps now reeled off by Senna, who leads by 0.575 of a second according to our timing screen from Gerhard Berger. Prost is third, Nigel Mansell is fourth, Nannini is fifth, Patrese is in 6th spot, 7th is Boutsen, 8th is Piquet, 9th Gougerman, 10th Donnelly, 11th Bernard, 12th Warwick, 13th Capelli, 14th Nakajima, 15th Suzuki, and it's Pirro, Caffey, Alboreto, Griard and De Cesaris as we go in car.
Yes, Berger in 5th gear. 6th gear. This is the run down to the Parabolica. He's probably on the road about 30 metres behind Ayrton Senna, and Prost probably a further 20 behind Berger. And there we see, well, which one of the two, Lola? I think that's Suzuki, or no, is it Eric Bernard? One of the two Lamborghini Lola LaRousse cars. Its race is run.
Also out is Pierre Luigi Martini. We saw that accident. We saw the result of that bump over the chicane. And Yannick Dalmas also retired just 5 laps into the race.
But these 3 cars, there's Eric Bernard, yes, pulled off. Well, he doesn't seem too upset about it. He's got a few fans there. They're giving a cheer. That's just at the 2nd chicane. So whether that was the cause of it or whether that was just coincidental, we haven't had a chance to see. But these 3 guys now beginning to edge away from Nigel Mansell in 4th spot. Nannini currently 7 seconds behind Mansell in 5th spot. And I would have thought Nannini's progress might have been a little bit quicker than it appears to be. Currently we're in on the 11th lap, and he can't afford to allow Mansell to get too far away.
Yes, 5 seconds now between Prost and Mansell. So Prost definitely the quicker of the 2 Ferrari drivers this weekend. As we go back in car, just takes another gear, taking 6th, I suspect.
Yes, that's 6th gear coming down to, you brake about 100 metres from about 190 miles an hour, take 4th gear, turn in, and then just nail that throttle. But it's a little bit of a juggling act. You can't always keep it. It just depends on the entry, how the track feels. Racing being really very much a seat of the pants art, even in these days of high technology.
Also Thierry Boutsen looked to me as if he was trying to get past Riccardo Patrese. So we've got that group of 3, then we've got Nigel Mansell, and then we've got another group of 3, or is it even 4? Senna, Berger and Prost. There you see the 2 Williams together, chased by Nelson Piquet, Nannini in front of them. Fastest lap though so far to Nigel Mansell, the 1:28.406.
Yes, Mansell looks like he is just marginally closer to Prost than he was. That quickest lap may have pulled him a little bit closer to Prost. Mansell, of course, running in clean air. He hasn't got oops, and again he ran on the exit of that Lesmo. He had his left rear wheel almost off the line, and that's not very comfortable because that can just drag you over that curb and cause all sorts of problems.
This is the 13th lap. Berger just staying out a little wide. Overtaking into that Parabolica, John, is not an easy operation, is it?
Well, not with the level of competition we see at the front here. The braking distance is so short. I mean, a driver would be on the brakes for less than a second to come down from 190 miles an hour to 120 miles an hour. So really the chance of overtaking anybody has got to be done before you get to the braking zone. You've got to be alongside the person and be on the inside of the track, and you've got to let the other driver allow you to get down the inside. So if you're defending your lead, for example, you're not going to open the door and invite, let's say, Berger to pass Senna.
Well, this trio very, very closely matched. This lap 14, a long way to go yet. Just catching sight of the abandoned car of Eric Bernard, one of 4 drivers who already had an end to their Italian Grand Prix.
The first 3 cars now more or less equidistant as they come up. Oh, a big spin. Or is that oil? Or yes, it is. That's Martin Donnelly's V12 Lamborghini engine distributing its contents. I suspect there's a fair bit of metal there as well. I mean, look at the amount of smoke. That is a very big blow up, and not a particularly happy day for the Lotus team. They've had one car substantially damaged, and Derek Warwick's shunt now a major engine blow up for Martin Donnelly.
Look at Boutsen trying to find a way around Patrese.
And Patrese making his Lotus, or his Lotus making his Williams look probably somewhat wider than it is. Really, that isn't necessary because Boutsen isn't in a position to challenge Patrese for his position. But Ricciardo, of course, defends to the last. Anybody behind him, Patrese in 6th. Here we see Donnelly. Yeah, that's a major blow-up, and of course, anybody immediately behind him would be completely obscured. You couldn't see where the track is. So Donnelly taking his helmet off now. Got a fairly long walk back. There's a few Irish fans. There are a lot of Irish people over here this weekend. So Martin giving him a little bit of a wave.
And Martin still to score World Championship points in this his first full season of Grand Prix racing. But he really has done an exceptional job. Well, there he is, Martin. We've got Eric Bernard out of the action with that damaged suspension, Martini with damaged suspension, and Yannick Dalmas, and we've also got Martin Donnelly. So 4 cars already out.
And of course, we've also got the real star of the opening laps, John Alesi, of course, went out very early when he spun at the first chicane and gently nudged the barrier with the right rear. Nothing particularly bad, just I think he stole the engine. But again, Patrese diving one side of the track to the other, but really Boutsen not putting him under pressure. No need for that.
Just to recap on that situation, Yannick Dalmas is actually 6 laps behind the leaders, but he has been in the pits and is back out on the racetrack. So not a retirement from Dalmas. Retirements Alesi, Bernard and Donnelly, 3 men that raced together in Formula 3000.
Yes, and these are the men of the future. These are going to be the men of the 90s. And then there's yellow flag out. Coming into that chicane, I think that's probably the residue of Martin Donnelly's Lamborghini engine that the flag is there to warn them there's probably oil, certainly water on the track. And of course, coming into the air with the oil flag, that zebra yellow and red flag indicates there's oil. And you can just see it just off the line going into the chicane. There's a black ribbon of oil and water. That's the remnants of what was in Martin Donnelly's engine. So probably and there we've got Pirro. His race is over. Looks like he's gone down the sand trap as well. It's always interesting when an engine blows up to see what the team. Well, Piquet trying to get past Boutsen, not succeeding. When the teams had a major blow up, I remember Ferrari one time. In fact, it was Mr. Figueri who was asked what happened to the engine, and I think he said that it had an oil leak. And when pressed further, it was discovered that the oil leak came from about a 6-inch hole in the crankcase. So I suppose sometimes fact is stranger than fiction.
Well, Senna going quicker and quicker now. Senna has pulled out 1.3 seconds ahead of Gerhard Berger and has just turned a 1:28.158 lap. So Senna starting to push now as we see Emanuele Pirro with that drinks tube swinging from his crash helmet, walking back. So not a happy Italian Grand Prix for him. Meanwhile, the battle continues. Their confirmation of that quick lap.
Yes, and you can see that Senna has pulled out probably the largest amount of air between himself and Berger we've seen in quite a number of laps. Prost more or less the same distance behind Berger he's been for the last number of laps. Patrese, Boutsen, Piquet still not really finding a way past Boutsen. And again, I would have thought the power of the Ford V8 engine was more or less on a par with that of the V10 engine that Boutsen has in his Williams.
Yes, the order just to run quickly down it. Senna, Berger, Prost, Mansell, Nannini, Patrese, Boutsen, Piquet, Gugelmin, Capelli, Nakajima, Suzuki. Then it's Caffi, Alboreto and De Cesaris. And Derek Warwick has just pulled into the pits in the spare Camel Lotus. So a problem for Derek. And meanwhile, Alan Prost gets ever closer to Gerhard Berger.
Yes, he's just gone past one of the Ligiers, and that sounded very rough indeed. It sounded like a bucket full of nails, in fact. So now Berger's got to get past in the Curva Grande. That's Alio's car, sounding very rough. Of course, Alio not making life too easy for Berger. He thought that Berger was going to go one way, he went the other way, and Alan Prost almost taking advantage of that little hiccup for Berger. Prost now right on the back of Berger's gearbox, and of course coming through these two corners he will lose a little bit of downforce, but he will also try and capitalize on the overtaking maneuver they had to to get round Philippe Alliot.
You might just notice lots of different advertising signs around this circuit. Unlike most of the tracks, it is not a circuit which has sold the rights to the All Sport Group, who control the signage at most racetracks, and they tend to restrict it to just 5 or 6 big advertisers. But here at Monza there must be about 200 different advertisers.
Now look at Alain Prost. He is in perfect position now, coming into the Parabolica, to get a tow, and that is to slipstream from the back of Berger's McLaren and have a little sniff. Now let's see if Prost can gain the slipstream. Well, I have to say the power of the Honda is greater than the power of the Ferrari engine, and unless Prost can really do something magical coming into this braking zone, Berger's going to keep a second spot. But that's the biggest challenge Berger has yet had from Alain Prost.
Yes, Prost very close behind now. Senna has opened the gap to 2.3 seconds. And Nigel Mansell has closed up a little bit on Prost, actually. Nigel Mansell keeping up a quick pace, 1:29.0 his last lap.
I'm beginning to wonder, was the wisdom of starting on that A compound Goodyear tire a wise one? Because, well, we saw Senna really just keeping his lead from Berger, but suddenly he sprinted away and he's got almost 2.5 seconds of a lead over Berger. And in fact, Senna's lap times are almost a second a lap quicker than that of Berger and Prost. So maybe Senna really has done the clever thing. He's got the right tyre choice, and he's now beginning to make use of it. As his fuel load is lightening, he's able to lean in the car that much harder without hurting the tyre.
Over in the pits, Derek Warwick's car has just been pushed away, so his Italian Grand Prix, what a hectic one it's been, is over.
Alain Prost now, probably a little bit further this time. And there we see Thierry Boutsen. A fairly unhappy Sunday for him. He was very unhappy with his car this morning, and well, he ain't going to be much happier now. That's off the track and out of the race. Of course, that's going to elevate Piquet, who will now be looking to launch an attack onto the back of Riccardo Patrese, Boutsen's teammate. Again, Senna, fastest race lap, 1:28.069. And each time he does this fastest race lap, he's opening that gap between himself and Berger. The gap now just over 2.5 seconds, 2.6 seconds.
Well, we've just had word from the Williams pit that Boutsen does not really know what is wrong with the car. We have a spy down in the camp, Williams camp there, just sending a message to us, and we thought perhaps the problem was in a drive shaft or in the transmission, but apparently they're not really sure. Boutsen is actually radioing in to the team to tell them about the car, but he just says it's broken. So this race on its 20th lap, one of the shortest Grand Prix of the season, and Senna now leading from Gerhard Berger, Prost, Mansell, Nannini, Patrese and Piquet. The action will continue on Eurosport. Join us after this break.
21, and Ayrton Senna is ahead of this battle for second and third between Berger and Prost by nearly 2.5 seconds. He's actually lapped that last lap a bit slower than Gerhard Berger. There's the gap between Berger and Prost. Mansell is still fourth, so it's still the two McLarens and the two Ferraris, the top 4 cars of Grand Prix racing of 1990, with Nannini 3 seconds behind Mansell now, powered by the Ford V8 engine. And there is Prost through, so he's done it at last.
Yes, and looked, I think Berger must be in trouble, because Prost seemed to go through without any sort of a fight, unless Berger missed a gear, because he's certainly holding up with Prost now. So maybe out of the chicane, as they went into Lesmo, it's easy to miss a gear there and have a bit of a fumble, because you're trying to line the car up to the Lesmo and you're accelerating very hard. And my suspicion would be that Gerhard Berger missed a gear there, because Prost appeared just to romp past him without difficulty.
Senna, you can see, is now up behind Modena. He's lapping quite a lot of people. He's behind Stefano Modena as he comes through to complete his 21st lap. And if Prost can benefit from the traffic, that was an attempt to give us a replay, I think. Something seems to have happened to the tape. Anyway, Ayrton Senna now is carving his way through the field. The crowd realises that Prost, and that was the replay of him passing Gerhard Berger, is in second position, 3.4 seconds on lap 22 out of 53 behind Ayrton Senna. So the rivals who head the World Championship and who between them have won 10 of this year's races have now got the Italian Grand Prix.
Yes, I've had a look at the tyres on Prost's car. There is Prost very much in amongst the traffic. And he won't want this to become a race for Charles.
Prost has managed to slot past Gerhard Berger, so the new order is Senna, Prost in Berger. Hopefully we're going to get that in replay in just a moment. Here's the replay coming up, John.
Well, this is coming down into the third chicane. I beg your pardon, this is the second chicane.
Quite a lot of traffic.
There's a lot of traffic. This is Senna beginning to get through the traffic, but look, coming out of the chicane, Berger really seems to lose all momentum. I suspect he maybe missed a gear. Prost was able to accelerate suddenly, just nipped past Berger. That wasn't a driving error. It may have been something quite simply like he just missed the gear. And of course the penalty for that is he's now been dropped from second to third spot. And if he wants to get past Prost, he's going to have to work very hard, because right now they're right in the midst of the midfield traffic. Senna's got clear of it. Prost finally getting past, now getting clear of it as well. But Berger still has a couple of cars to get by before he can yet get back up to Prost.
Yes,
Modena between, it's just now Stefano Modena between Prost and Berger. We saw yesterday how much Modena really caused Berger all sorts of problems in qualifying when he didn't really see him coming into that first chicane. I hope today Stefano's got his mirrors adjusted enough to see Berger coming up alongside. He stays to the left, Berger goes through clean, but now Nigel Mansell's coming into the equation. Mansell, running in fourth spot, has closed up to Berger. He's 0.8 of a second behind him, but of course Berger's also got to get past Modena.
So Senna, in fact, 5.2 seconds ahead of Alain Prost. Mansell behind the Brabham of Modena, goes to the right and past him, gives him a shower of sparks in his face as he goes past.
And just look how quickly he went past Modena there. Now we've got Larini doing the same thing. Modena, I suspect, on his Pirelli tyres is beginning to suffer. The tyre may well be deteriorating, but this man Nigel Mansell is improving.
Yes, in fact, Larini actually overtaking Modena in the race down about 14th spot. So it is Senna, Prost, Berger, Mansell, Nannini and Patrese. Those are the men in the points. Then it's Piquet, the two Leighton House machines, Nakajima and Suzuki, the two Japanese drivers running together. And no sign of anyone making a pit stop for fresh tyres yet. This is lap number 24 of the 53, so very close to half distance. And there is Nigel Mansell, and Nigel looks as if he's on a very big charge now, although that last lap of Mansell's down back into the 130s.
Well, of course, we've had traffic, and you're going to get a seesaw effect as these leading cars start to get through the tail enders and the midfield cars. So you might see one driver getting a lap in a 28, a low 28, then his next lap could be 2 or more seconds a lap slower. So that's the consequence of having to go through these slower cars. Looking at that Ligier climbing over those curbs coming out of that second chicane. But Mansell now really putting on a bit of an effort to catch up, try and get onto the back of Gerhard Berger's gearbox. Alain Prost second, Berger third. Mansell visually closing on Berger. And now we've got Nannini also, who's really within 3 seconds or so of the back of Mansell's Ferrari. So the prospect of getting a 5-car chain, something that we saw in Hungary 2 races ago, really looks quite promising.
Certainly does. A lot of people blame that in Hungary on the nature of the racetrack. We can't compare Monza with the Hungaroring, a very different type of racetrack. And so if they do all close up, it's just the heat of competition in Formula One this year. Senna, you can see his lead from the helicopter over the next two.
Yes, and Alain Prost is the second of those 2 cars. The first one is Andrea de Cesaris, who's about to be lapped now by Prost. Berger goes through, Nigel Mansell in fourth. and very shortly we'll see the familiar green, yellow and red colours of the Benetton of Nannini, who is currently just 3 seconds behind Mansell. Mansell 2 seconds behind Berger.
No, I think De Cesaris is proving a little difficult to get past, having one of his better runs. He's in 12th spot.
And Mauricio Gugelmin has decided to call it a day. That's just about the start-finish line. At least for him, his walk back to the pitch will be relatively rapid. Prost now getting past De Cesaris finally, giving him a little indication that that wasn't really the kind of cooperation he was hoping for. Of course, Berger now has the same problem, but with that little bit of extra Honda horsepower, Berger, I think, can cope with De Cesaris more easily. And again, that will draw Berger marginally closer to Prost.
Yes, well, Gugelmin had been running in 8th place, so that's a big disappointment for the Leighton House team. But all their thoughts are now on the new Ilmor engine, which has run on the dyno in the last couple of weeks. Several of the new Grand Prix engines have been revved up on their dynos.
Yes, one of those engines, Andrew, really is a very significant engine. That is the Porsche V12 engine, which will go exclusively next year to Footwork Arrow's team, and it was run, I believe, in the afternoon of Thursday, and in true Porsche form, they put a bit of oil in, some water into it, cranked it over, put the plugs in and fired it up, and it fired up first crack.
There's the retirements going through. Alesi Martini, Eric Bernard, Martin Donnelly, Emanuele Pirro. Lap 18 it was Derek Warwick, and then Thierry Boutsen, we don't know the reason for that one. Then you've just seen Mauricio Gugelmin pull off. So this race most definitely taking its toll as Nigel Mansell blasts past De Cesaris. Senna, Prost, Berger, Mansell, Nannini, Patrese, that's the top 6. Senna now 7.8 seconds ahead of Alan Prost. Just put in a 1:28.027. Quickest lap of the race so far. Berger just under a second behind Alan Prost, and then Mansell about 2 seconds behind him, but closing up.
Already to date, I hate to say it, but Ayrton Senna's race is going the way his copybook said it would go, and with that 7.5 second lead, it's becoming more comfortable every lap. And as we said at the start of the race, there was a gamble that Senna took starting on that softer race tyre, and the point I think he was trying to make in the early part of the race was not, he was trying to drive as slow as possible, retain his lead, but just do it as slowly as possible to get that fuel load down to a point where the tyre would not be affected and overheat. So I think he's decided that that point has come, and now he's able to get on with the program and take advantage of that stickier compound. The B compound is that little bit softer, a little bit more grippy, and of course around these, particularly the chicanes, it is in the chicanes where you really feel the effect of that softer compound. In the faster corners, it's the aerodynamic downforce that really gives you the benefit, but it's the slow corners where you want to turn in, you want to rely on good turn in on the front, and also you want to rely on good grip in the rear when you put the power on. So Ayrton Senna appears to have done it all right so far. Lap 27.
Hard on the brakes into the parabolica, down through the gearbox. Some drivers even ducking down in the cockpit through that corner. John, we saw Alesi doing that during qualifying.
Well, I can't quite imagine what he would be doing that for. I can't think of any direct advantage in him doing that, other than just the guy was putting in so much effort. I mean, he was braking so late. I've never seen anybody brake so late into the parabolica as Alesi. So maybe that was just the effect of that mega late braking.
Yannick Dalmas there, who had that pit stop, long pit stop, mixed up amongst the leading bunch. There's Berger, the black car, that is Dalmas.
We've got Alboreto, also Alboreto getting past Dalmas, pulling across, but of course Mansell caught behind Michele Alboreto, and he'll not be able to get past until the exit, the second of these two Lesmo corners. Now Mansell ought to be able to pull out, as we see, going the long way around that curve. It's a bit bumpy on the outside. You go, oh, move over, Michele. Nigel, I think, expressing that he wanted a bit more room. Probably Michele's mirrors were taped over or something. He didn't read that situation as quickly as Mansell would have preferred. He has lost ground in that manoeuvre to Berger, so Nigel might be saying a few things into his balaclava helmet that we couldn't repeat over the air.
Yes, Alboreto, of course, a former Ferrari driver, and in the paddock yesterday, pleased to see Stefan Johansson and René Arnoux, two other former Ferrari drivers, both saying they may be going kart racing next season, IndyCar racing. Arnoux, of course, hasn't raced since the end of last season in Adelaide, and I thought he'd hung up his helmet for good, but apparently not. He wants to go kart racing.
Well, he's a young man, relatively speaking, but he's almost my age, isn't he? He has to be quite young. But I mean, motor racing today is not just a sport for young men, it's a sport for anybody, and as long as your mentality and your spirit is strong, there's no reason to stop motor racing. And I think this idea of retiring in your middle 30s is something that isn't necessary at all.
Yes, well, Arnoux really not able to get a decent drive, I think, as much as anything else. He also hoped to drive that Peugeot sports car, which will make its debut in 2 weeks' time in Canada, and you can see that on Eurosport, that race. The same weekend as the Portuguese Grand Prix, so there will be an absolute feast of motorsport, World Championship motorsport on Eurosport in 2 weeks' time. And there is Alain Prost as an engine goes past, is sounding very rough indeed. Didn't quite catch who it was.
Yes, I think it was Philippe Alliot. We heard him a bit earlier in the race. The bag of nails is still running on, but more than likely that is actually a broken exhaust primary pipe, the pipe which attaches to the engine, the cylinder head, and they often break up there, and of course that is what causes that very uneven beat from the V8 Cosworth engine. Sounds a lot worse than it is, loses a bit of horsepower, but doesn't generally affect the reliability, not in the distance of a race.
Well, Prost going very quickly. So the order: Senna, Prost, Berger, Mansell, Nannini, Patrese, Piquet. Stay with us, we'll be back after this break.
Prost, and we'll get a chance to see just if Alain Prost can do anything about chipping into Senna's lead. This is now the critical stage of the race, and it's the chance for Prost to try and carve a bit into that lead with a clear track in front of him.
It is lap 30, and we've got the two rivals. Ayrton Senna leading Prost in the World Championship by 13 points. Senna's from 9 races, Prost's from 8 races, and it is the best 11 scores out of 16 in the World Championship series of races from Phoenix at the beginning of the year down to Australia at the end, which count.
Well, the good news for the race, for us spectators, is that apart from a rather sick Ligier, there's nothing much in front of Ayrton Senna. There is the Ligier, just got a glimpse of it there, but it shouldn't be a problem to deal with that, because it sounded to be running a bit rough, unless it was just a broken exhaust, which makes a horrible noise but doesn't hurt the power very much. And Alain Prost back in the 27s, and again took that 0.3 of a second back that he lost on the previous lap to Ayrton Senna. There, Prost goes through Berger. It's also, of course, an important time with a clear run for Prost to try and put a bit more daylight between himself and Gerhard Berger. Because although Berger isn't actually threatening him at the moment, it's still aggravating to have to be aware of somebody behind you to pick up the pieces. Prost would far rather just to be able to concentrate purely ahead on Ayrton Senna.
And since things are fairly static at the moment, let's bring you up to date with a bit of the gossip about what might be happening. Jean Alesi, who started off so well here, is rumoured to be going to all sorts of teams, ranging from Ferrari on the one hand to Williams on the other, or staying with Tyrrell. Nigel Mansell is rumoured to be talking to Williams, and in which case his decision not to retire, his decision to retire at the end of 1990 would be reversed. And there is the Englishman. He's had 8 retirements so far this year. He's only had 3 finishes, and he will be hoping that if this is his last race for Ferrari at Monza, and it's certainly that he finishes here, and Prost is faster again.
Monza with the news that Alain Prost has just lowered the lap record to 1:27.289 as he chases after Ayrton Senna. The gap currently 7.6 seconds. Gerhard Berger is third, Nigel Mansell is fourth, and Riccardo Patrese is fifth. It seems that while you were away, Nannini had a problem. We saw him slow up, but we're waiting to see the pictures to see what has happened to Sandro Nannini. But Senna it is who leads from Prost, Berger, Mansell and Patrese, and we think the problem is a clutch problem with Sandro Nannini's Benetton Ford.
Well, I mean, a clutch problem I can't quite understand, because other than for starts, you really don't need a clutch. You can drive one of these cars without a clutch, but of course the problem that may be affecting him is that the clutch is not actually gripping, it's slipping. Well, they're changing the tyres on Nannini's car, but if he's got a clutch problem and it is slipping, in other words, the drive's not getting through to the rear wheels, changing tyres isn't going to help that situation. But they may be able to fix it. Sometimes a can of Coke on it, or even fire extinguisher powder has been known to fix a clutch, a slipping clutch. So we'll have to wait and see a few more minutes to see, can Nannini make it out of the pits.
Indeed, Capelli has moved in front of both the Benettons, so he's up in the points. A good drive from Capelli. Nannini has just accelerated back onto the racetrack. The gap between Senna and Prost at the end of a lap 33, 7.5 seconds exactly. Berger just about 3 seconds behind Prost, and then another 7.5 seconds to Nigel Mansell. So the top four quite well spread out. And Nelson Piquet definitely also slowed. Just go through the 16 that are currently running. Senna, Prost, Berger, Mansell, Patrese and Capelli. That's the top six. 7th Nannini, 8th Nakajima, 9th Suzuki, 10th, back down to 10th Nelson Piquet. Not sure of the problem there. Alex Caffey is 11th, then Alboreto, De Cesaris, Larini, Alio and Gruillard.
Well, the reason for Piquet is, of course, he's just had a pit stop, 4 tyres. That might have been the car we saw in the pits, but Piquet currently in 10th spot. Nannini showing 8th, so whether that is a true reflection of his position, we have to wait for one more lap till they come past and trip that computer beam at the start-finish line. But here we see Nigel Mansell with Piquet, Alex Caffey. Alex Caffey, it is believed, will be at Arrows next year. The team, I feel, do want to retain him. I gather they're not anxious to retain Michele Alboreto, who's making eyes at Scuderia Italia. That's a team formed by a few wealthy Italian industrialists, and Michele is on a friendly basis with these guys. So I think Pirro and De Cesaris may well have to look around just to protect their own positions, as if Alboreto goes there isn't going to be room for both Pirro and De Cesaris.
No, that's the team that grew out of the saloon car racing team Brixia Motorsport. In fact, they still call it the BMS Dallara in some of their press information. There's Senna, the bright yellow helmet, the colours of Brazil, followed by Alain Prost, and then Berger.
All these 3 lead cars are running in so middle to high 1:27, so everything more or less remaining fairly static. Mansell 4th, Patrese 5th, and Ivan Capelli now up into 6th spot.
Yes, and Nannini back on the racetrack despite that pit stop, still holding 8th position.
Ayrton Senna through the first chicane, using quite a lot of that curbing there, and that curbing we said earlier in the program, it's quite a serrated curbing, and it doesn't really do a racing car a lot of good to put it across it. It is a shorter distance around the corner, but with the lead Senna has currently just over 7 seconds, I would prefer to see him stay off them there as much as possible, because any additional loads, especially into the tyres and the suspension, is something that may create a worry over the course of race distance. But really, I think Ayrton Senna doesn't need my advice in that matter. He's fully qualified to make that decision.
Yes, sir, on the 35th lap of the 53. This race just about 2/3 run. There's still a bit of cat and mouse going on. I have to say, John, my Goodyear informant seems to know the form better than yours, because no one, apart from perhaps Piquet, has made a pit stop for tyres. There's Gerhard Berger, the man from Virgil in Austria originally. Father runs a trucking company. In fact, Gerhard was involved in that till he got really into the Formula One business.
Well, one thing I'll tell Gerhard Berger, I think he's discovered, is that being a McLaren driver, there isn't going to be any time to look after the truck business, because when you drive for the McLaren Honda team, that is a 100% commitment, and everything in your life takes second place.
And that is despite the two test drivers that they have, Alan McNish and Jonathan Palmer. I think Gerhard has actually tried the V12 engine now, hasn't he, John, in the car recently?
Well, they've been running the car in Japan. They also had it here at Monza a number of weeks ago when they were doing one of these pre-race tests. The engine, I understand, is more powerful than the current V10 engine that Senna and Berger are using, but it hasn't actually been seen to be as quick, or certainly quicker, than that package. But I think when the definitive V12 car appears next year, I imagine it will appear to be substantially quicker than the current V10 car we're just looking at now.
Yes, of course, at the top of the show we had that interview with Mr. Gotto, the head of Honda's Formula One project, and he was very candid and frank about the engine. He did say it had more power, but he said they still had some lubrication problems with it, and also the drivability didn't seem quite so good, the actual use of the horsepower in a car. But as John says, I'm sure they're going to get that right. And Mr. Gotto did confirm that McLaren's will definitely run V12 engines, not V10s next year. Those engines will be in the back of Ken Tyrrell's cars, and there is still the possibility they may have a Mugen rather than a Honda cam cover on them. Mr. Gotto wasn't absolutely 100% clear on that point, but he did concede that it might be a possibility.
The fastest lap, Senna now 26.7.
Yes, the gap 7.777, all the sevens. And Gerhard Berger 3.2 seconds behind Prost. Mansell 12 seconds now behind Berger, and then another 12-second gap from Mansell to Patrese, and then a very long gap from Patrese to Mauricio Gugelmin.
So Berger now really not able to make much impression on Alain Prost. That, what I consider, was a missed gear change in that second chicane, lost Berger second place, and really he hasn't been able to get back on equal terms with Prost. Prost been trading fastest race lap throughout with Ayrton Senna, and really Gerhard's having his first season in McLaren. I would call it a little bit of a culture shock to him. I mean, having Ayrton Senna as your teammate, toughest man in the world to have as a teammate, and I think it'll really be next year when we can see this apprenticeship. I think Berger is serving to Senna will really begin to show the benefits, and next year a very strong team with Senna and Berger. But of course the biggest news that arose today was the proposed aerodynamic changes. Now a lot of these engines are designed around current cars. Now these new regulations virtually can eliminate all the current engine philosophy. We've got one of the Leighton houses just pulling off. So that's Ivan Capelli. Gugelmin is out. Nannini about to be gobbled up by Ayrton Senna coming into the third of the chicanes. But going back to this engine situation, all the engines are designed to fit into a car with this kind of aerodynamic thinking. You don't just design an engine and throw it at a chassis. The whole package is thought out as a one-piece kit. But of course now this big aerodynamic change may well alter totally the thinking. People like Honda, Ford, Renault, Ferrari, they may well choose to go for something like an engine, a flat 12 engine, an engine that is what I would call it is called a 180-degree engine. In other words, horizontally opposed, because with a flat-bottom car, that engine layout may well be more advantageous. So by making that very simplistic proposed change to the aerodynamic regulations for 91, it has thrown into confusion the entire Formula 1 paddock.
Yes, John. Meanwhile, Senna and Prost separated by 7.5 seconds. Berger 10 seconds behind him. Then Nigel Mansell, Riccardo Patrese, and a man we've hardly seen in this race, but he is up to 6th spot. It's Satoru Nakajima. A good run from him in the Tyrrell. Then Capelli, Nannini, Suzuki, Piquet, Cafe, Alboreto, De Cesaris, Larini and Alio. That's the official standings after 37 laps.
But of course we just saw Capelli pull off, so that was our computer reading 1 lap behind what the situation is on the road. But this man leading on the road, and this is a situation he was in last year, led the race with total ease. Coming down the straight, there's a little whiff of blue oil smoke came out of the back of his McLaren, out of that Honda engine, and just at this point the engine launched itself. Rod came out the side, put oil over the rear tyre, Senna spun in his own oil, and really a very sad end to a masterful drive.
Meanwhile, John, at the end of the previous lap, the gap between Senna and Prost down to 6.7 seconds. And we are focusing strongly on our timing screen because we do think that Prost is closing. Well, Senna had an answer. He put in a quicker one, down to a 1:26.622. And indeed, he increased the gap a little bit over Alan Prost, so it is now 6.8 seconds. So it does seem that Senna has an answer. When Prost speeds up, Senna can answer back. Berger is third.
But of course, I mean, again, Senna may have reasons to slow down. He might want to slow down again on this tyre situation. He would like to conserve it. He sees Prost surging up to him, reducing his lead by a second. So he just gets back with the program, chucks in a 26.622 and gets back up to almost 7 seconds ahead of Prost. So whatever threat he offers to Senna, Senna does appear to have an answer.
Yes, there we just saw a snatch of Nakajima, who is just about to be lapped by Senna. There is Alan Prost. He certainly won't give up. A flash of flame from the exhaust. There's the third place man, Gerhard Berger from Austria, just lapping Nannini. Nannini back in 7th place, Piquet 8th, Cafe 9th, Alboreto 10th.
Alan Prost coming up to the start-finish line, commencing his 41st lap, 55-lap race. So we're now into the last quarter of the race, and really if he's going to do anything about Ayrton Senna, he's got to start getting on with that particular program at 6.8 seconds, more or less the same as the last lap. Gerhard Berger further 4 seconds behind Prost, but watching him through the chicane there, he really was chucking the car into that chicane, and you could see an amount of slide. So I suspect that Berger's tyres are really beginning to suffer now from that charge in the very early stages of the race, where he was pushing Senna really very hard indeed.
Yes, Johnny actually added a couple of laps onto the race. It is a 53-lap race, so we're into the last 13. There's Nakajima again, as Senna gets that little bit closer. There is Prost. Well, we expected a humdinger between these two, and this race could still turn out this way. Senna held up a little bit behind Nakajima, John.
Yes, but Senna wisely this time chose not to try and dive down the inside of Nakajima. He did that before, or Grand Prix ago here at Monza, dived down the inside, and really that was a big problem. But Nakajima, not a problem anymore. He'll get past him. He is now past him coming into the first chicane, and it is Alan Prost that will have to contend with passing Nakajima. But that was intelligent race thinking, race driving from Senna. He could have dived down the inside, but he wasn't really sure if Nakajima knew he was there, and he wasn't really sure either at what point Nakajima would commit himself to enter the corner. So this is the maturity that Senna now is illustrating more and more often, and not just as race driving but in his qualifying driving.
Yes, Prost did in that incident close a little bit. Senna just fractionally held up by Nakajima, and Prost still pushing hard. His fastest lap so far in the race, 1:26.466. So the gap closes up to 6.1 seconds. Berger is still third, Mansell fourth, Patrese fifth. And then it's Nakajima in sixth spot, ahead of the two Benettons, and then Alex Caffey.
Well, Senna now has got the two Ligiers in sight. They really ought not to be too big a problem. With luck, he'll get one of them before he goes into Parabolica. He'll get the other one on the exit of the Parabolica. So Larini is the front of those two cars. Alio with the red marks in the rear wing. Alan Prost has got yet to get past Nakajima. Alio, while Senna will steam on forward and pluck off Larini as he comes down into the chicane. And really, in a race like this, it's the luck of the traffic that often plays a big part. Senna got through. Well, it was fairly tight, but the cooperation from Larini enabled him to get through.
And Prost still going quicker than Senna, because the gap is now 5.1 seconds. Prost just a little quicker than his previous lap, 1:26.3, a whole second a lap quicker than Senna. But the traffic is part of that equation, I suspect. Berger is third.
Yes, that really, that overtaking of Nakajima, that little hesitation allowing Nakajima to take the corner really was the reason why we saw the time between Prost and Senna reduce. But now Prost is the problem with the traffic, and he I think will find it, the gap between himself and Senna, back up to around about the middle 6 seconds.
Yes, this is an important lap. This is what they call in ice hockey a power play lap, isn't it, John?
Yes, well now Prost caught Nakajima at a bad part of the track for him. He'll be slightly slower exiting that chicane. He will want to capitalise on the slipstream he will get from Nakajima's Tyrrell 4, but that Tyrrell 4 is pretty quick down the straight. Prost really having to work hard to come alongside Nakajima. He's now alongside him, but not on the most ideal line to enter the corner. So again, his exit speed from this Parabolica corner will be marginally slower than before, and we'll have a little look and see what the gap as Prost comes across the line is between himself and Senna. Well, there you are, it's back up to 6.1 seconds. That's the difference traffic makes.
Into the last 10 laps then of the Italian Grand Prix. A race started with that huge shunt from which miraculously Derek Warwick stepped unhurt. The race was stopped, we had a restart, and then we had Jean Alesi really charging hard, but then spinning off at one of the free chicanes very early on in the race. Then we had Senna chased by his teammate Berger, and then as the race wore on, Alan Prost split the two McLarens. So now the order is Senna, Prost, Berger, with Nigel Mansell in fourth place.
This hasn't been one of Nigel Mansell's greatest Grand Prix, but I think Nigel really is just looking to get a finish. He's had so many poor results over the last number of Grand Prix that anything at all in the points is going to be some consolation for. The disappointment in Belgium, being knocked off in Hungary. So Mansell currently in fourth, and really not much prospect of improving that. It will rely on other people's problems to enable him to get into the top three and on a podium.
And at the moment, Nakajima still in the points. He's only scored 1 point so far this season, and that was at the very beginning. And those tortuous streets in Phoenix, Arizona.
Well, the gap, Andrew, now up to 7.7 seconds. And again, this is the effect of having to get through the traffic. Senna, of course, lost time to Prost when he was going through it. Now Prost losing time to Senna, so we're really more or less back to where we were about 5 laps ago. That 7.7 second gap is really where it was 10 minutes ago.
And all the time Senna looks so smooth, as indeed does Alan Prost, two great craftsmen of Formula One, the masters of their art. Around that Lesmo corner. Through that second one, which is so nearly flat out, and then the track dives down under that bridge and then into the chicane. Here comes Alan Prost.
And you'll almost see right into Prost's helmet just as he came up there under braking. the concentration on those eyes is so intense. And Prost now on his way down to the parabolic. Berger got a clear view of Prost for the first time in a number of laps. He's got through the traffic as well. These three cars, distance between Senna in the lead and Berger in third spot is about 11 seconds. Senna through the first chicane. Prost coming down into that chicane. Both drivers using about the same amount of curb.
Yes, Alain Prost now lives near Geneva in Switzerland. Originally, of course, from France, from Saint-Chamond. And started his Grand Prix racing career way back in 1980 in the Argentine Grand Prix. And this is 165th race. And he's won 43 of them, which of course is an all-time record. But it's a record which maybe in the next 3 or 4 years, this man here, Ayrton Senna, could surpass.
Well, I think he's the only man currently in Formula One racing that's got any chance at all of getting near to it, or possibly surpassing it. But the gap now between Prost and Senna's extended even more. It's 8.2 seconds. So Alain Prost is being confronted with a disappearing McLaren. Well, we got Dalmas again in the AGS being about to be overtaken, but not in a part of the circuit that's going to cause Senna any problem. There's nothing more depressing for a driver than seeing the competition ahead of you just gradually eking further away. And of course for Senna it's lovely to see the shape, that scarlet prancing horse that Prost is driving, becoming smaller and smaller in his mirrors.
And Senna has just put in another quick one, going quicker almost every lap, 1:26.254. And Prost now 8.5 seconds behind. And the race going towards its last 6, going up 5 laps.
Well, this is the race that Senna wanted to win for many reasons. He's never won here at Italy, but more important for him, he wants to put a further 3 points between himself and Prost, assuming Prost finishes second, and that will give him a 16-point advantage over Alain Prost if they finish in the positions they are currently on the road. And then it will be down to the final 2 rounds in the championship in Europe, first in Portugal and Estoril, then 1 week later at the Jerez circuit in southern Spain. Now those are 2 racetracks which I've been predicting may well suit the Ferrari and Prost in particular better than Senna and the McLaren, but McLaren have been very hurt by the criticism of their cars' aerodynamic performances, particularly around the French Grand Prix, British Grand Prix period, and they've been working flat out to improve the car. They have improved the car, so really the prospect of those next 2 Grand Prix is going to be what will seal the championship in 1990.
Senna then on lap 48 now, hold up behind Arrows and Michele Alboreto. Prost now the gap 8.9 seconds between the pair of them, and then it's 5 seconds back to Gerhard Berger. And very disappointing this weekend, the Canon Williams Renault machines. Thierry Boutsen, a mid-race retirement. The performance of the Williams does seem to be rather up and down, doesn't it, John?
Yes, it's been erratic. The car, I must say, on the track didn't look to be particularly comfortable to drive. It looked, I would call it, very darty. The front of the car was very nervous indeed, and you know, on a circuit like Monza, it is a fast circuit. It doesn't, in my mind, provide confidence for the driver, and you've got to really be able to attack here, because although we've got those 2 wonderful Lesmore corners, these 3 chicanes are also equally important, and time lost in those corners really is time that's very hard to make up elsewhere. So both Williams, in particular Patrese car, to me have not looked comfortable race cars, and you know, from a confidence point of view, a comfortable race car really does matter.
Caffey still running ahead of Alboreto. Arrow's team still trying very hard to attract a big name driver. They definitely have the money to do so.
Yes, well, they've got Thierry Boutsen, who currently is at Williams, and they're waiting for Bootson's situation to be clarified by Williams. But should Boutson find himself out of favour, in other words not driving for Williams next year, then it's almost certain that Thierry Boutson will be in that slot.
Return to it, and if he doesn't, of course, it could be the other ex-Arrows man, Derek Warwick.
Yes, indeed.
He openly admits that he's been talking to Arrows.
Yes, and I think Arrows would really be very happy to have Derek Warwick and Thierry Boutson back, because those are two guys they've had in the team before. They know them, they know their style of driving, they know how they operate, and those two, I think, really would be their first two choices. But of course they will be denied that choice should Frank Williams finally decide to retain Boutson yet again for another season.
Well, there's Alan Prost and there's Ayrton Senna, and 8.7 seconds is the gap between them. And Prost finding there's something of a fruitless chase, it has to be said.
The only amusement he might find is watching Alboreto and De Cesar's battle over 10th spot. Of course, he doesn't want that to hold up his progress, but sometimes the antics of cars that are running in the middle of the field can be amusing. But of course, as I say, the last thing Prost will want is to get held up behind these two. De Cesaris right over the curbs going into that chicane. Alboreto, of course, with his mirrors full of a De Lara behind him, and not really fully aware that behind De Cesaris is Alan Prost, the man running second in the race at this time.
Yes, 4 laps to go then. This lap number 50 they're running on now. It's Alboreto and Alan Prost held up behind them.
Yes, well, Prost is getting held up. In fact, as you can almost see visually, his speed has been reduced by the battle of these two cars ahead of him. So the only chance he has is now down this section of circuit. Blue flags being waved, but De Cesaris about to pull out. You see, he's not aware of what's happening behind him. Now he's aware. Well, what's he going to do? In, out, in, out. He's got past Alboreto. In the meantime, Prost, I suspect, might have lost at the end of this lap probably a further 2 seconds. So I would imagine the gap between Senna and Prost, when Prost finally gets across the line, is going to be over 10 seconds. And Gerhard Berger now very much closer to Alan Prost. Look at De Cesaris. I mean, really, he's
a boy, isn't he?
Well, Alan Prost decided that this isn't amusing after all. Poor old De Cesaris thinks he's driving the race of his life to get past Alboreto. Now he's moved across. Prost rocketing past De Cesaris, but that gap 11.9 seconds, over 3 seconds. That lap cost Alan Prost, and that effectively spells the end of Prost's challenge to victory in this race. Gerhard Berger, coincidentally, is only 1.4 seconds behind Prost, but he has to get past Alboreto and that man De Cesaris. But I think he will get past Alboreto fairly easily coming into the first chicane.
Well, Alboreto won't be very happy at all, because De Cesaris used the situation to pass him. Alboreto answered the blue flags and moved over to let Prost zap by, and meanwhile De Cesaris took that as a hint to nudge past and move up that one slot.
Boys will be boys, Andrew.
They certainly will.
The Berger's now got past De Cesaris. He's a little bit further than 1.4 seconds behind Prost than he was when he crossed the line, but it's that little bit of sort of a spur to the last 2 laps to have one final attempt at wrestling second spot away from Prost.
Senna, Prost, Berger, that's the top 3. Mansell, Patrese, Nakajima, that's the top 6. Senna on the 52nd lap now, on the penultimate lap. The gap 12 seconds. That Prost just pulled a little bit away from Berger, so 2 seconds between Prost and Berger.
Berger really sliding through that chicane, the exit of the chicane, giving it all at 700 horsepower, well, let's say 680 in a race, certainly. And a final endeavour to make up those 2 seconds deficit. Andrew catching up to the back of Prost and getting past him are 2 totally different stories. But really, I think Gerhardt's going to have to be satisfied yet again with 3rd spot.
just about 4 miles remaining for Ayrton Senna.
Well, Ayrton Senna getting by Alex Caffey, who's driven a really good race. Caffey currently in 9th spot. Alan Prost second, 12 seconds behind Senna. Gerhard Berger third, currently just over 2 seconds behind. But now this is the last lap, and really might see a big reduction in the gap between Senna and Prost. Senna now traditionally drops off his lap speed considerably, and don't worry about it, folks. It's just Ayrton Senna being ultra cautious and attempting not to do anything wrong that would deny him his first Monza victory. But really, he's driven a superb race, and my anticipated pit stop race has been proved wrong. Senna started on the B compound, and it was the right choice.
Yes, Senna has been on the victory rostrum here before. He's had a second and he has had a third place. Oh, that's a shame. There's Alboreto right at the end of the race, beached on those high curbstones. So that'll move Nicola Larini up a spot.
And Berger's closer to Prost than any time at all. He's not really close enough, I think, to threaten Prost for a second slot. But of course, I can't believe that Prost is lifting off and cruising home as Ayrton Senna we see doing here.
Senna down into the Parabolica for the very last time. Sweeps round it. Heads towards the checkered flag. The crowd not that excited. And there it is. Ayrton Senna, the winner. His first Italian Grand Prix. He increases his lead in the World Championship. Alan Prost finishes second, 6 seconds behind. Gerhard Berger third, 1.3 seconds behind him.
And that is a brilliant Ayrton Senna, the hand, not the hand, the fist out, punching the sky. This is a race he wanted to win, not just because he wanted to win the Italian Grand Prix, but because that gives him a further 3 points advantage over Prost. And really those 16 points are the most significant 16-point lead in any championship Ayrton Senna's been involved in. But of course, Estoril coming up in 2 weeks' time, and that's a circuit where I think that the gap between Senna and Prost, between McLaren and Ferrari, is going to be much, much closer. It's a much more demanding circuit from a chassis, from the aerodynamics, than Monza is. Monza is traditionally a power circuit. You've got to get round this corner. This is Lesmo 1. Not a very good view of the corner, I'm afraid, but the next 2 races really are going to be the prelude to the 1990 championship, and I hope we see 2 crackers.
So Senna, Prost, Berger and Mansell. Nigel Mansell finishing 5th. A somewhat subdued drive from a man from the Isle of Man. Patrese just crossed the line now to finish 5th. Nakajima a lap behind, already confirmed in 6th spot. Then Piquet and Nannini both out of the points. Caffey, De Cesaris and Larini. There you are, that's the confirmation. The race only lasting 1 hour, 18 minutes. Prost 6 seconds behind, Berger third, Mansell fourth. Well, certainly not a classic Italian Grand Prix, John. An intriguing race. That sensational shunt at the beginning. There you are, Piquet 7th, Nannini 8th, Caffey 9th, De Cesaris in 10th place, Larini 11th, and Alboreto shown there in 12th place after that off right at the very end of the race. And the 2 Marlboro McLarens going home, 1st and 3rd. So a very pleasing performance for the boys from Woking. And he's still punching the air in victory, Ayrton Senna. Ayrton Senna from Sao Paulo. There's the positions in the World Championship now. Senna 72, Prost 56, Berger 37, Boutsen 27, Piquet 24, Patrese 17, Nannini and Mansell both have 16 points. Well, John, your final verdict on that race?
I think it was a masterful Senna effort, but also a masterful McLaren effort. They set out to win the race. They did that. They got the man they want to win, winning, and looks good for them in the championship.
McLaren Honda head up the Constructors' title, 109, Ferrari 72, Williams Renault have 44, Benetton 40. Well, there we are, the final shots of Ayrton Senna from John Watson and myself, Andrew Marriott. We're saying goodbye from Monza. It's arrivederci from both of us.
La stessa cosa non può dirsi con Berger, si diceva poco tempo fa proprio con la Ferrari e con Cesare Fiori. In effetti il discorso è proprio di Senna, che pare essere stratosferico, perché Berger, essendo pur un discorso abbastanza importante perché è un pilota veloce, però non rende quanto Senna, non riesce mai a raggiungere.
Ezio, sta cominciando la tradizionale invasione di Monza, preoccupati anche della tua incolumità.
Sì.
Oggi ti abbiamo fatto correre avanti e indietro.
Sì.
Comunque, se riesci a cogliere ancora qualche protagonista, abbiamo la linea.
Io avrei voluto raccogliere un protagonista eccezionale, ma non riesco a trovarlo ovviamente in questa bolgia. Intanto lo diciamo subito. Romolo Tavoni, ho visto stamattina che al briefing faceva firmare la sua bandiera a scacchi ai vari piloti, Prost, Mansell, eccetera. È una figura importantissima per questo sport automobilistico e Clay Regazzoni mi darà ragione. Abbandona proprio con questa gara la sua attività.
È un signore.
Ecco, allora io direi che tra poco potremo anche intervistarlo, perché merita veramente. Intanto, mentre aspettiamo ovviamente che ci siano i piloti sul podio, dopodiché cercheremo anche durante il passaggio dei piloti di scambiare qualche battuta con i primi tre, poi faremo le unilaterali. Cioè
ecco, se ti può essere utile, ricordati che come al solito l'organizzazione della rigidissima cerimonia di premiazione, rigidissima nel senso che c'è un regolamento ben preciso di parecchie pagine che pone anche severissime penali a chi non rispetta, è diretto dal dottor Grandi, al quale puoi fare riferimento.
Ecco, volevo dire, probabilmente non riusciamo in questo momento, ma veniamo qui, ecco, siamo con Romolo Tavoni, averlo trovato è proprio l'ago nel pagliaio, vediamo se riusciamo anche a riprendere con le immagini. Romolo Tavoni, abbiamo sentito che questa è l'ultima fatica di una gloriosa carriera.
Non lo so se sia gloriosa, caro amico, io ce l'ho messa tutta, mi sono impegnato, ma vorrei proprio dire che non è merito mio, è merito di tutti quelli che hanno lavorato credendo in questo sport che è il più bello del mondo. Perché questo è umanità, è ricerca, intelligenza, capacità. Noi cerchiamo solo di fare il nostro dovere.
Ma davvero questa bandiera a scacchi non sventola più? Magari qualche volta anche con giro d'anticipo?
No, io con giro d'anticipo la vorrei fare, ma non posso, mi squalifico. C'è una cosa sola, che so che la fido in mani eccezionali, più brave delle mie e più giovani.
Ecco, io vorrei, visto che parliamo di giovani e meno giovani, non diciamo di vecchi, lei è in collegamento adesso con Clay Regazzoni.
Ah, Clay.
Romolo, complimenti.
Grazie, Clay, ti ricordo sempre con affetto. Per me resti e sei la sola grande vittoria a Monza, perché era la grande vittoria di Clay Regazzoni della Ferrari. Senti, Clay, non te ne offendere, la Ferrari ha vinto anche oggi, la Ferrari vince sempre.
Vince sempre, hai
almeno
ragione.
nel cuore della gente vince sempre.
Ecco, andiamo a sentire intanto cosa dice Senna, visto che vince sempre, grazie. Complimenti.
Senna è un campione, non ha bisogno di lobby. Complimenti. Grazie. Ringrazio tutti quelli della Rai che mi hanno sempre voluto bene, grazie a tutti.
Ezio, quando vuoi la linea è tua, prendila tranquillamente, tienila aperta, mentre intanto nelle immagini vedete il terzetto dei protagonisti, Senna, Prost, Berger, ed ecco l'inno brasiliano per il vincitore. Ricordo che è un campionato piloti, quindi prima di tutto l'inno del pilota.
Ha ragione Tavoni, la Ferrari vince sempre, hai visto gli striscioni, le bandiere.
Però giustamente la regia ci fa vedere anche le bandiere brasiliane. A questo punto allora concludiamo la telecronaca diretta su queste immagini in replay rallentato di Senna che saluta dopo la vittoria, ricordandovi che Ayrton Senna ha vinto con la McLaren Honda il Gran Premio d'Italia 61esima edizione, 12ª prova del mondiale, precedendo l'inquadrato Alain Prost, che adesso nel campionato del mondo con la Ferrari è staccato di 16 punti dal brasiliano che guida la classifica con 72 punti contro i 56 dell'avversario. Prossimo incontro il 23 settembre per il Gran Premio di Portogallo all'Estoril. le ultime chance per la Ferrari e per Prost di riagganciare il fortissimo duo qui sul podio, rappresentato appunto da Senna primo e da Berger terzo. Grazie anche a nome di Ezio Dermiani e di Clay Regazzoni, che è tornato a trovarci, per averci seguito, e appuntamento anche ai nostri successivi servizi in questa grande giornata di sport a Monza, in cui, non dimentichiamoci, comincia anche un grande campionato di calcio. Buon pomeriggio a tutti.
Oh, many things really. Oh shit, things like that really. As soon as the thing escaped me, it was obviously going to be an accident, and I knew it was going to be a big accident, so you really just brace yourself ready for the impact. The first impact, I remember seeing the front left wheel going over my helmet, and then the car went on its side and was going along the barrier, and then come out onto the race circuit, and although it only took maybe 4 or 5 seconds, it actually seemed to take 4 or 5 minutes. Because I just kept on going and going. I got out the car, I looked straight over to make sure there was nothing else coming to hit me so I could get out the way. I then walked to the grass, and during that walk I'd sussed out that the car was obviously finished. It was in the middle of the track, so therefore they had to stop the race. The red flag still wasn't up at this stage. And to get to the spare car, because I didn't want to start from the pit lane, I'd rather start from my grid position, and I thought if I got there quick enough, I get into the car and out and onto the grid before the pit exit closed.
I had so many problems yesterday. I wasn't able to do any running, any setup, which was vital for today's result. So I had only this morning to try to get the car as good as possible, and then make the tire choice, the right one, and get everything right, because at the level of the championship we are running, you gotta have everything right. So it was a lot of unknown, but of course it was a great victory.
The car was quite good at the beginning, but as usual, and this time I was behind Gerhard. It was difficult behind him because I made a choice with a with the hard tire, with A, and I don't think it was a good choice. And behind him I was sliding too much. So I think I blistered the tires, and then I had a big vibration, especially at the end. It was not possible to push harder. Every time I was pushing, it was worse.
I think the tire choice was wrong. I went to the harder tires. What was okay the first laps, but then as the tank, because the car goes lighter, I just was sliding too much.
So that victory for Ayrton Senna increases his World Championship lead over Alain Prost to 16 points. Gerhard Berger is still third, Thierry Boutsen fourth, Nelson Piquet in fifth position, but Riccardo Patrese moves up to sixth position ahead of Nannini and Mansell. McLaren, of course, have increased their lead in the Constructors' Championship over Ferrari to 37 points, with Williams in third place and Benetton in fourth position. Now, in 2 weeks' time, it's the Portuguese Grand Prix, and the circuit there should suit the Ferraris. They need a win to keep their World Championship hopes alive.